Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing pretty well, Jared. How are you doing today?
I have no complaints. We have a great Ohio State win, and yes, I don't want to hear anyone suggest otherwise.
Yeah,
I do not want to hear anyone suggest otherwise. Ohio State looked bad. Ohio State looked sloppy. CJ Stroud didn't perform to 100% for the entire football game. Ohio State really only scored 14 points. Who the hell said that? And I don't want to hear the reasoning, Michigan fans. Well, okay, there's your source. Offense was terrible. They only scored 54 points. Exactly. A Michigan fan. Yeah. So who cares what they say?
54-10 against one of the best defenses in college football here. And we saw it firsthand. Like, I got to find the stats here real quick, Jared, but the first half stats, not that great. It was not all that great here. So if I look at the halftime scores, this one here, halftime scores, Ohio State had 133 offensive yards, but was up 26-10.
A defensive touchdown is always helpful, but then again, they both had defensive touchdowns. So
defensive touchdowns, but also just the defense just playing lights out here, and we'll cover that here shortly. But defense playing lights out, even with the slow start, even with the slow start that the offense had, and they picked up in the third and beginning of the fourth quarter, where they scored 28 points in the second half there. Yeah, it's not the type of offense we are used to seeing this year, where we're used to seeing Ohio State 500, 600 yards of total offense. And in a way, it was kind of good that Ohio State, when they couldn't get those first downs, they couldn't get those touchdowns in the red zone, they found other ways to get the ball into better field position to get other touchdowns and all that too. It's great to see that Ohio State overall, from what I've seen so far this year, has a pretty complete team. And we got to finally see Ohio State going up against a tough defense. We didn't really get to see that all this year, where it was, okay, they played Notre Dame, a pretty good defense, and they took care of business there. Then after that is Toledo, Arkansas State, Rutgers, all of that. And finally you got to see them go up against a really good defense. And we'll critique them here shortly. Yeah, and there's definitely areas to improve, but overall, I'm very happy with this win. Anytime you give Iowa their worst defeat in how many years, decades, their worst defeat, you got to feel pretty good.
This is, Kyle already said this, but it needs to be said again, and it probably won't be the last. This is legitimately one of the best defenses in college football. Do not let Iowa's record fool you. Don't let the fact that they're Iowa fool you, because a lot of people just kind of want to be like, oh, they're big and slow and blah, 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 blah. No, this is an athletic defense. They're also a big, tough defense. And let's really keep in mind here that this is a great defensive line that they played against. They got away with a lot of holding. Yeah, there was probably some defensive holdings and some bumps past 5 yards that probably should have been called. I thought sometimes you get those calls, sometimes you don't. They really should have got that pass interference. I think it was Ohio State's second field goal in the first quarter. There was the missed PI in the corner. I'm just trying to remember specifically which drive it was. But like, that happens, and you just have to deal. You're not always going to get those calls. You're just not.
Yeah. So even though Ohio State only had 133 offensive yards in the first half, 230 in the second half, about doubling what they did in the first half, and CJ Stroud finally finding his groove in that second half and made some great throws and some even better catches by those stellar wide receivers. Yeah, exactly. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie.
But they
Yeah,
didn't.
exactly.
But they didn't. Ohio State played incredibly well.
Incredibly well. And
both halves.
when you look at it, Jared,
both halves. Because they were still scoring points. I get it, like in the red zone, you want to get those touchdowns. But they still scored 4 times in the first quarter. Ohio State scored 4 times in the first quarter against one of the best defenses in college football. Yes, you need to make those field goals into touchdowns. Yes, but this is, again, one of the best defenses in college football. This, unless Ohio State picks up Georgia at some point in the postseason. Unless that happens, Ohio State just played the best defense that they will play all year, and it's not even close.
Yep.
The best defense that Ohio State will play all year, the Horned Frogs, please.
Stop it. But honestly, like
this is unless they play Georgia, unless they meet Georgia at some point during the playoffs or a bowl game or something, this is the best defense Ohio State will play all year. Period. Second place, not close.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could make the argument for
Gangland. We're not going to play our own defense.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument for Michigan. Michigan has a good defense, but I don't think I think when you compare the defenses, you got Iowa and Ohio State on their own pedestal in the Big Ten, and then Michigan, and then others from there. And we saw from this Ohio State defense just how great they are. Iowa only had one good offensive drive, and that got them 3 points.
And that was
one good offensive drive and only 3 points. Just let that. Yes,
that was penalty assisted as well.
Yes. And yes, it goes out with the saying, yes, this was a very, very, and I can't emphasize how many times I can say very bad offense Iowa is. Like, I mean, we talked about it in our preview show last week. Like we were sitting here like, how many points can they realistically score? Unless their defense, and at times it seemed like their defense really tried to bail them out. They set up their offense to get points with great field position or get defensive touchdowns, and we saw that in the first quarter. There, we were like, they got a touchdown. Do they have any more in them? And spoiler alert, they didn't.
Yeah. Gangland says our defense is still better in total D, and they played more cupcakes. Illinois is number 1 in total D, and we are number 2. What does Illinois? What big advantage does Illinois and Ohio State have over Iowa in those statistics? Neither of those teams have played against Ohio State's offense.
And to a degree, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, you can say Michigan as well. I mean, a lot of people do not want to talk about Michigan, and I mean, understand Ohio State hates Michigan, yada yada yada. Yes, absolutely. But guys, Michigan's offense is starting to look pretty good right now.
Yeah.
So Iowa playing 2 pretty good offenses, and they held Michigan down to no, I'm not a sympathizer. I'm being realistic. They held Michigan to 27 points, but Ohio State doubling that, 54 points. You got to be feeling really good if you're a Buckeye player, right, or a Buckeye fan right now.
Austin says it's just an offensive line and running back, which is good. McCarthy sucks. McCarthy doesn't suck. But he's not win you a game off on his own back. Great. Yeah, no, he's not elite. No. McCarthy's mid. He's better than mid. But he's also like, he's not going to put an entire game on his back. He's just not. He's better than Petrus. Yes. Yes, Zach, he is. That's true. That is very true.
I mean, you go 6 for 14 with 2 interceptions and 49 yards. Yeah, it's hard to not do worse than that. It's really hard. So
Gangland says
let's
Corum is going to be run down with how much they run him. That's an interesting thing to watch. I think Edwards is a good running back as well. For what that's worth, maybe they should start sprinkling him in more. Yeah, Edwards is good. But yeah, anyway, we're not talking about Michigan. Let's
get back here. So let's get to the grades here, Jared. Ohio State 54-10, advantage 360 yards to Iowa's 159, 6 turnovers caused by this Buckeyes, and Ohio State did have 2 turnovers in this game as well. So let's go ahead and grade the positions here, starting with the coaching as a whole. The coaching from an A to an F. How would you grade the coaching staff, Jared?
I can't point to anything the coaches did and say bad. I thought the offensive scheme was fine. I think there were execution issues. I think that they did a great job with the halftime adjustments. Play calling was a C. No, I don't think that's true at all. I do not think that's true at all. I think if there were better blocking or some occasional better, just like inches of execution difference, either by a quarterback or a wide receiver, I don't see an issue. I do not see an issue with the play calling, if I'm being honest with you. 10 in the box, let's run. Okay, like I think maybe that's a good point. But I also don't think they had 10 in the box all that often. I think you're oversimplifying.
What would you grade the coaching staff, Jared?
I give them an A-. If you want to do a B+, I think that's also fine.
I think that's probably about the average one I'm seeing. I see a B+, I see an A, I see a C. So yeah, I think that averaged to about a B+ there. So
Gangland says they did it.
I would give an A- as well, Jared. Yeah, there were.
Well, hold on. This is Gangland says they did it on 3rd and short. So he's talking about the 10 in the box. Ryan Day needs to give in those situations. Ryan Day needs to give CJ Stroud the green light to keep it when necessary. And a lot of people give Stroud crap for not running more. Guys, they didn't let Fields run either. At what point do you realize that it's not CJ making the decision?
Yeah, I'd give the coaching staff an A- as well. They made great halftime adjustments, and we saw they put up 28 points. Then it settled for field goals in that second half there. I was really pleased with at least the halftime adjustments, but definitely some iffy play calling here and there on the offense about how to run and cut and run blocking and all that. And yeah, a lot of it came down to execution, but I mean, you rewatch the game, and there's definitely some things that the coaching staff should have picked up a little bit earlier. So with the coaching staff, going to split this to the offensive side. So offensive coaching, I would say B overall. I would give the offensive coaching staff a B. It's their worst offensive performance, at least from a yardage standpoint, all year. but yet they still put up that many points here. I am a little concerned about the running attack when it comes to very physical defensive linemen now that we've seen Ohio State and how well they did not perform against a pretty good defensive line here. And it's got some things that the offensive coaching staff have things to work on.
Kyle, they scored 54 points against one of the best defenses in college football.
All right. But to be fair, Jared, how many times did the defense set them up to get the ball in Iowa's territory? A lot of the time.
I don't care.
And they didn't. This game could have been so much more. Like it could have been 70s it really could have been, the score could have been like 70-10, but they struggled moving the ball when it got towards the red zone in that first half. They settled for a lot of field goals, and yeah, me being nitpicky here, Jared, but I'm calling it as it is and what
Kyle,
I'm seeing.
what do we say? We grade based off of expectation, right?
Uh-huh.
What
Yeah.
was your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I know.
What was your
It was
score
30
prediction?
It was 31-10.
You said 31. They scored 54. They exceeded your expectations by a lot.
Yes.
What changed between when we did the show on Thursday versus now? You
So-
knew then that this was an excellent defense and Ohio State was going to struggle a bit on the offense. We need to acknowledge that there's another team on the field, another team with strengths and weaknesses. They put 54 points on the best defense in college football, except maybe Georgia.
It's exactly what Spike says here. Didn't expect 6 turnovers in this game here. Like if you take it, you can never take away like, oh, if this didn't happen or if this happened and this would have happened. You never know. But 6 turnovers though was the cause of Ohio State scoring that many points. If you were to take away even half of those, I think that score would have been a lot closer to that 31-10 prediction that I had here. But because they had those 6 turnovers there, they set the offense up so many times to score.
Do I need to remind you, however, that they put the backups in on offense?
Okay.
Had it been 31-10 in the fourth quarter, did they put the backups in?
No, they didn't. They didn't.
You're being too hard. You're being too hard. You need to acknowledge that Iowa is a good football team.
And they are, yes, and I acknowledge that, Jared.
Well, excuse me, a good defense. They're not a good football team, but they're a good defense.
Okay, what would you grade the offensive coaching then, Jared?
A. There were execution issues, but I don't think that's on the coaches.
All right, we're going to move on. So I see here B minus grade here. So I think chat's agreeing with me here, Jared. But we're moving on. So let's move on to the quarterback, CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, 20 for 30, 286 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception that led to a touchdown. I believe this is his second pick 6 touchdown of the year.
Wasn't that was a fumble, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a fumble. Yes, you are right. Yes, it was the fumble.
I mean, he got hit. The ball came out. It could have been, but
yes,
but whatever.
Yeah. What would you grade CJ's performance here?
I think he threw some ill-advised throws at times. I think that he was rattled in the first half. I also think he was not getting the protection he's used to getting. We'll talk about the offensive line next, but I feel like the interior of the offensive line had its worst game of the year. I thought CJ Stroud played well, honestly. I do think that, again, they were getting the wide receivers were getting held a lot. There was at least one egregious pass interference not called, but so I can give him a lot of excuses, right? His blocking wasn't as good as he's used to getting. The wide receivers getting held and bumped past 5 yards. There was a lot working against CJ Stroud in this game, and but all of those excuses aside, one, you have to remain a little more collected, which I think during the late stages of the second quarter, I think he was on tilt a bit. He needs to sort of, center himself and stay composed, which I don't feel like he was doing. He threw some ill-advised throws at times. But with all of those challenges and with all of that working against him, He still throws 4 touchdowns. He still has a 66% completion percentage. He still has he averages 9.5 per attempt. These are all still great numbers. So I got to give him like an A- again for the composure, for some ill-advised throws. We still need to I almost said dock him for that. But I still think he had a very good game.
Yeah, I would say, B+ is where I'm, maybe B+ there. I mean, he had 2 turnovers in this game, which definitely knock it down here, but it's starting to be a trend we're seeing with CJ Stroud. Is that 4 straight games with an interception now? It's definitely unlike CJ Stroud right now, and it's should we be a little concerned? I don't think so here.
I think there are times in which we see CJ Stroud place balls into tiny windows, and when it works, we all go, wow, he's amazing. And when he doesn't quite get the ball into that tiny window, we get mad because it's an interception. But I think he was
a bad miss. Rutgers was a bad read. Sparty was communication. And this one was, I think this one was just a bad throw. I think this was just a bad throw by CJ. And
I think we saw that bad choice more than it was a bad throw.
And we saw that a few times too. Like there was one, he had a wide open Marvin Harrison Jr. that if he had it on target there, instead of he missed it by a few yards. If it was on target, Marvin Harrison would have caught that and went right into the end zone there instead of settling for a field goal.
Yeah, it all comes down to like little things. Like again, we look at the first quarter. You have 3 field goals. A slightly better touch pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. turns one of those field goals into a touchdown. One of those field goals, you would have at least had 4 more chances or 3 more chances at a touchdown, had a pretty obvious, in my opinion, pass interference been called.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't get too judgy over stuff that misses by like this much.
Yeah. But again, expectations, that's why I gave the grade I did. All right. Offensive line, Jared. Moving on to the offensive line, which is probably the big topic everybody's been talking about with this game. It's hard for me to give him a good grade here. Yes, I think CJ only had that 1 sack, which ended up being the fumble that led to Iowa's only touchdown for the game. But man, it's struggled. There was times that the interior of that offensive line just struggled. Not so much on the pass protection, because I thought the pass protection was fine, but
he got a lot of pressure in his face that he's not used to getting.
There was, but I'd say just the rushing attack, man, if you rewatch that game, there's so many times that interior line just collapsed, and the second level of the Iowa defense got in and made all those tackles for loss or tackle right at the line there, which is why you saw 30 rushing attempts, 66 yards, 2.2 per carry.
Yeah.
It's on how they did with the pass protection and on the rushing attack here.
Zach says Michigan will feast.
I'd average it to a C.
Zach says Michigan will feast if we don't fix this. No.
Yes.
Michigan does not have the defensive tackles that Iowa has. Guys, this is not just an Ohio State thing. This is also an Iowa thing. You can't look at this through the scope specifically of Ohio State. Ohio State will not face a defensive line of 4 guys plus a really good linebacking core. They will not face a front 7 this good again this season unless they happen to play Georgia. Unless they happen to play Georgia, this is the best front 7 they will play all year, period, not close.
Yeah, so I give the overall offensive line a C. Jared, what would you give the offensive line? I'm seeing I'm seeing a C as well. Um,
I thought
C minus.
I thought Paris Johnson had a good game. Um, I thought the left side of the line was not bad. But yeah, the interior was a mess. And I thought Dwan Jones had an okay game. Donovan struggled, did he? I don't think Donovan Jackson struggled that. I think it was. I don't want to name names, but I think Paris played fine. I thought Donovan Jackson played fine, and I thought Dwan Jones played fine. And so you can do your own math from there. But you have to kind of average. But but we're not just doing interior, and we're not doing individual player grades. So I think like a C plus. Because I don't think it was the entire offensive line.
Okay. All right. We're gonna move on to the running backs here. It's hard for me to give, again, kind of like the offensive line. It's hard for me to give the running backs a good grade here. Henderson 3.5 average, Mine Williams 1.9 per carry, and yeah, a lot of it because the offensive line couldn't get their blocks too. But I felt like there were times when they tried to cut it out, or they tried to do more, and they actually lost yardage too. So I'd give the running backs probably a C as well for here. I was not really impressed with how well the running backs tried to be equally as physical as the defense was that was coming at them there. So I'd give the running backs a C.
Can I just not grade the running backs?
No, you have to, Jerry.
Because look, they didn't have anywhere to go. It's almost like an incomplete grade. Yes, Spikes. If I have to like give them a B minus, I suppose. But I don't know what we could have expected them to do. To be honest, like, which host is here to talk, and who is here to develop film like a Polaroid? Moving on.
All right, wide receivers, Jared.
Oh, because of the red room. Got it.
All right, wide receivers, Jared. I think that this was just the shining light in the offense. Just an A for this for the wide receivers. It's rare that you saw any kind of um, catches or any throws that did not get caught if it hit their hand. Marvin Harrison Jr. had another just stellar grab in the end zone there. Yeah, solid A for the wide receivers.
I don't share your. We talk a lot about how the wide receivers were held a lot and how they were bumped a lot, even past 5 yards. But they have to fight through that better. I think they got stymied by the bump a lot. And I think because Iowa had success doing it, you're going to see other teams attempt to replicate doing it. Now, do the other teams have the players to do that? Not most of the time, no. But they're going to now try. People are going to watch the Iowa film. They're going to see Iowa successfully bumping these wide receivers, and other teams are going to try and do the same. I think they had a pretty obvious deficiency in their game, and obviously not all of them, but we're grading them as a wide receiving group. So I don't know. I give them a B.
Okay. All right. And the tight ends here. We had Stover with 2 catches, and Mitch Rossi got himself another touchdown here.
G. Scott had a catch as well.
Oh yeah, forgot G. Scott did as well. Yeah. I I feel yes. It's always great seeing the tight ends getting the catches that they deserve here, but I think they're equally responsible for the run blocking or the lack of that happened here. And I'd probably give the tight ends here probably a maybe a B minus. I'll stick with a B here just because you did get a Mitch Rossi touchdown here, so I'll give the tight ends a B. Definitely a lot of work that could be done on the run block side.
I give him a C. Um, Again, like I always try and say like, man, we got to remember to give the tight ends credit for the run blocking as well, and that has to go both ways.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the defensive side, defensive coaching. A plus. A plus.
Yeah.
You held a team to 158 yards of total offense, 158 yards, and realistically just 3 points created from the offense. Yeah, A plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right. So Jared agrees there. All right. All right. Defensive end, Jared, A plus again. Should like everything here just be an A plus?
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. We'll go through it and we'll see.
Defensive ends though. Yeah, I'd give a A plus as well. We got to see Harrison was just a monster in this game. Absolute monster.
You could make the case that Harrison was the MVP of this football game in many ways, especially early in the game. He was all over the film. He was all over the place as far as just impacting the game. And again, like you look at the stats and you don't necessarily see a lot, but I think that's just a recurring thing we've seen from the defensive ends this year. Although, you know, he does have 2 tackles for a loss, which is excellent. And he does get a sack, which is one of those tackles for loss. He broke up a pass at the line of scrimmage. But a lot of times what gets lost in that is how key those plays are in the moment. But yeah, this was also a game where we saw a lot of the defensive ends who weren't necessarily getting their stats get some stats. Caden Curry got half of a sack. I already said Zach Harrison got a sack. JT got a sack. Jean-Baptiste. Yeah, Jean-Baptiste gets a sack. So we got a situation where a lot of these guys who weren't getting sacks finally played a team in which either the offensive coordinator didn't plan or didn't communicate the plan to his defensive or to his quarterbacks that you need to get rid of the ball very quickly.
Yeah.
That's we always talk about the book on Ohio State. And one of the things that's like in the first or second line of the book on Ohio State is you have at max 2.5 seconds to throw the ball.
3.5 of those 5 sacks from those defensive lines. And Ohio State had 10 tackle for losses.
They have a young O-line. Yeah, no, Matt, absolutely. But Ohio State. So again, we talk about how like with Ohio State's offensive line, we also need to talk about how good Iowa's defensive line is. Ohio State's defensive line is amazing. You have to realize as an offensive coordinator and communicate this to your quarterbacks, you get like 2 reads max. You get like 2 reads max. And then you gotta either get rid of it or run or something. Every other quarterback we've seen play Ohio State since the Bosa's, they've done this. Every single quarterback has basically been get rid of the ball as quick as possible because you have to.
Yep. All right. Defensive tackles, Jared. I think same thing with the defensive end. Defensive tackles had an amazing game, plugging up the hole. A plus there. What was it here? Iowa, 35 attempts, 77 yards, 2.2 yards per carry. Yeah, absolutely great game by the defensive tackles, A+.
Yeah, Cage had 1.5 tackles for loss and half of a sack. Even gets 2 solo tackles from the defensive tackle position where it's not always easy to get solo tackles at the DT, but gets 5 tackles in as a whole. Jerrion Cage had a really sneaky, really good game this game.
Yep. All right, linebackers, Jared. Linebackers.
Tommy Eichenberg gets a touchdown. Cody Simon had a really big game this game. We did see a bit. I have to go. I haven't rewatched. Unfortunately did not get a chance to rewatch this game yet. So I don't know. Anyone in the chat or maybe people in the YouTube comments, did Ohio State have 3 linebackers on the field more in this game than they had all year? Because I feel like we saw a lot more Cody Simon in this game than we've seen all year. And that's did not come at the expense of Eichenberg or Chambers being on the field.
No, absolutely. No, there definitely was more. There definitely was more 3 linebackers sets in this game, which I mean, why not when you
which was a thing we talked about on Know Your Enemy. Is this the type of game where they might switch to more of a 4-3?
Yeah. And I mean, and there were times too when, they only had 2 linebackers in, but that safety really was that 3rd linebacker too. Yeah.
We'll get to safeties. Ransom had a great game, but we'll get to safeties. But yeah, Eichenberg, 5 solo tackles and a tackle for loss, 7 total tackles. Of course, he gets the touchdown on the interception return. Cody Simon, 6 total tackles, 4 of those solos, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. Cody Simon had a great game this game. And then Chambers still has a really good game, 2 solo tackles, 4 total tackles. So
he did, absolutely.
This felt a little bit more like a Cody Simon game than a Steel Chambers game, at least statistically speaking. But yeah, and Tommy Eichenberg continues to be like,
I tell you, who made some good plays, even made some great plays here, even though it doesn't really show up in the stats, only had 1 tackle here. But Chip Trainum actually had a pretty decent game too when he came in. I saw a few plays there, and yeah, I really liked what I saw Chip in that game. All right, cornerbacks.
Chip got a carry too, by the way.
What was that?
He got a carry.
He did have a carry. Yeah. He fun fact, he had the best average for running backs. 1 carry for 9 yards.
All
right, cornerbacks here, Jared. 11 for 24, 81 yards, 3 interceptions by Iowa's quarterback here. I mean,
where did those interceptions go?
Two of them did go to McAllister, which is a safety. But yeah, none of those interceptions did go to corners.
And then the third obviously went to Eichenberg.
Yeah, I'd give the corners a solid A. Like one of the things that we've talked about for years, Jared, if you don't really hear much about a corner other than, oh, he got an interception, or, oh, he just laid this receiver down, and you hear Gus Johnson yelling, "You got barbecue back here."
Yeah.
If you don't hear any of that, it's usually a good thing for the corners. Yeah.
But we have to grade on a proper scale. Kyle, we did a whole Know Your Enemy thing we recorded on Wednesday, came out on Thursday. We talked about some of Iowa's best receivers. Do you remember any of their names? We literally just did the show. And then for what is us yesterday, watched an entire football game. Can you name one of their wide receivers?
Wide receivers, not tight ends. Right?
Yeah, I know what I said. Yeah. That's my point. Like, yes, there was gang. That's my point. Like, yes, the cornerbacks had a good game. because we basically didn't have to acknowledge them all game. Exactly what you want from a corner. But they were not at all challenged this game, between the fact that Iowa has no talent at wide receiver, to say it very plainly, and the fact that the defensive line and the linebackers were getting such great pressure on the quarterback that they did, even if the wide receivers could get open, they never had time to.
How many receptions did their wide receivers have in this game, Jared? Guess.
How many receptions did their wide receivers get?
Look into the camera. Stare into the camera, Jared.
Hands up. Hand check.
How many receptions did the wide receivers have? What does everybody in the chat here say? Nomad says 0.
It might be 0. It honestly might be 0. I don't remember one.
We got a 5 in there. We got 2. We got a -5. Nomad, you can't vote twice. 4. 4 receptions. That means 7 of those were to the tight end. So Sam Laporta had 6 receptions. Everybody else had 1. One for the rest of the other receptions there. Yeah. So 6 by Sam, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I get an A for the corners. Yeah. Okay. All right. And safeties, A+. A+ here. And I tell you what, yes, we can talk all day about how great McAllister had. He had 2 interceptions this game here, but did you see who got to play a lot in this game, Jared?
Kai Stokes.
Kai Stokes got to see the field a lot in this game.
How do we actually know like what his snap count was? Like, I know he put up pretty decent snaps, pretty decent stats. Maybe 15. Gangland says Kai Stokes. I don't remember him playing a lot during the competitive portion of the game. But he is like one of the first guys they throw out there when they start to like slowly rotate the backups in. He's gotten some junk time this year, but I'll go ahead and put him, I think, in the same conversation with Caden Curry. Whenever they put those guys out there late in games, you notice them right away.
Yeah.
Kai Stokes and Caden Curry are 2 future stars at Ohio State.
All right, in the last position here, the special teams. Jared,
hold on. I don't want to move away from safeties quite yet. Ransom, 8 total tackles, 5 solo tackles. Was the top tackle getter on the team. I need to throw that out there. Like, I think his name also in the conversation for like potential like MVP for the game.
Okay. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yes. All right. All right. Special teams, Jared. In this game, did Mirko do better than Taylor? Did Mirko actually have a better game than Taylor? Because the answer is yes. Mirko had a better average. 2 of his 3 punts were inside the 20, and Taylor had 5 punts, had a lower average per punt, and only 1 of his 5 ended up being inside the 20-yard line. And to be fair, yes, Iowa was pinned back most of the game.
He was punting into a larger field, if we're being fair.
But that means that he should have been able to have a better average, though, because that's a good point. Field. But Mirko out hunting Taylor in this game. But
we also have to talk about Ruggles in a game in which Ruggles. Ohio State said, "Hey, Ruggles, we need you this game." Delivers, absolutely delivers. And also no kickoffs out of bounds this game. That's always a good sign. No kickoffs out of bounds. Yeah, that is big. Stupidly, yes, that's apparently a big deal.
Kickoff coverage was much better in this game here. Yeah, you mentioned Noah Ruggles 4 for 4 in this game. Really improved his field goal percentage. I mean, that 66% looks a lot better after this game here.
Yeah, I give him an A+, honestly.
A plus for me on A. I'm going to stick with A.
Yeah, I know, Kyle. Ibuka had a decent shot at one of those punts.
He did. If he had that one extra block, yeah. All right. And time for our Buckeye leaves here, Jared. Where would you like to start here? Offense? You want to give an offensive Buckeye leaf?
I think we always start with the offense.
Sure. Which Buckeye leaf would you give on the offensive side?
I'm gonna go, and this one might be a little weird. I'm gonna go Julian Fleming. Julian Fleming is starting to remind me of Jamo a lot. Because like Ibuka and Harrison are getting more press. They get more receptions. They get more touchdowns. But just like when Jamo was at Ohio State, if you get too focused, yeah, Ibuka and Harrison are getting more volume. But if you forget about Fleming or Jamo in these cases, if you forget about him for one play, he's gonna burn your ass.
Mm-hmm. I got a Paris in the chat here for their offense Buckeye leave here, and I'll go with the another wide receiver here, and I'll go with Emeka Ibuka here. There was times when you needed that big time catch, and you could easily give it to Marvin Harrison Jr. too, but it seemed like a lot of those critical downs, Emeka delivered. He had 6 receptions to 80 yards and a touchdown, averaging 13.3 per catch there. I felt like on critical plays, Ibuka did come up big. All right, moving on to the defensive
real quick,
side.
Zach says Fleming reminds me of Mac.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, defensive side, Jared. I'm going to go with Zach Harrison. That's probably the one of the easiest choices to choose from. But I'll go with Zach Harrison in this game. Just a disruptive player, especially early on in the game.
I was also going to say Zach Harrison, but since you said that, I will audible. I'll audible and I'll switch to Cody Simon. Ohio State's not asked a ton of Cody Simon so far this year. It's been primarily Eichenberg and Chambers. Simon was my favorite linebacker on the team last year. I'll say that. But when they said, when they turned to Simon and said, hey, you're going to get a lot more snaps this game, he immediately delivers. So give me Cody Simon.
All right. And for the wild card, let me find the emoji in here, Jared. I'm going to go with Noah Ruggles as my wild card here. 4 for 4 on field goal, 6 for 6 on extra points here. He did not struggle in this game.
Noah, no struggle, Ruggle. Pick 6 pickles, nothing. I feel. Listen, Spikes, let me be super honest with you. I feel like I've already handed out a bunch to Eichenberg. That's literally. Kyle took. I'm talking to Spikes. Kyle took Harrison. I had to audible real quick. And I was like, oh, should I give it to Eichenberg or should I give it to Simon? And I was like, I've already given a bunch to Eichenberg this year. Let me give one to Simon. That was literally my thought process. I mean, he's earned them. Absolutely, he has. Absolutely, he has. But he's also not going to lose any sleep over over whether the Sloopcast gives him a Buckeye leaf or not. My wild card, I'm going to give to Jaron Cage. 5 tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss, gets a sack in this game. Kyle, Nomad wants to know what you're drinking.
Nothing now. I'm out.
Fair.
All right. So that's it, Jared. That is our episode here. Overall, very, very impressed with this performance from Ohio State. Beating a very good defensive team by 44 points here. The Silver Bullets, Jared, are back. And let's see they keep it. Let's see they can keep it up for next weekend as they head on over to Happy Valley in a not whiteout for a change.
Are they striping or doing something like that? It's a nooner. They decided they didn't want to do the whiteout on a nooner, and I don't blame them.
They decided they actually wanted to win a game, and so they played Minnesota for their whiteout last weekend.
They looked good. We'll talk about that on Tuesday, but they looked good in that game.
Yep. You got anything else, Jared, before we wrap it up?
I don't think. I think I talked about everything I really wanted to talk about this game. Maybe Caleb Brown got a reception, the first of his career at Ohio State. And I just want to say once again, because I think it really needs to be said, Iowa has a great defense, and Ohio State scored 54 points. That really needs to be emphasized as many times as possible, so I'll say it one more time. There is another team on the field, and it's not always about Ohio State.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you have to ask the question, why did Ohio State's offense struggle so bad? It's because Iowa's defense is really good. Period. Now, then you have to ask the question, well, why did Ohio State's offense look so good in the second half? Well, because Iowa has a very talented starting group, they don't have Ohio State's depth. Ohio State can take out, Tommy Eichenberg, put in Cody Simon, and not have a huge drop-off.
Yeah, that's what I mean? We talked about, too, was how much can Ohio State's offense wear down Iowa, and we saw that there.
Right.
The one thing we did not talk about was JSN.
I just want to say, hold on. I want to finish that thought real quick, Kyle. I will say this. If Ohio State does end up playing Georgia does have that depth. You're not going to be able to pack it on in the second half against Georgia. But that is the primary difference between a school like Ohio State and a school like Iowa. Both teams can put an amazing starting 11 on the field. Sometimes. Not every year, in the case of Iowa, but they are capable of putting an NFL defense on the field. Iowa is capable of that, and they've done that this year. But the primary difference is that Iowa can't do it every year. Ohio State can. And Ohio State has quality backups, whereas a place like Iowa does not have that sort of depth where they can play 22 guys on the defense comfortably. Ohio State can play 22 plus comfortably on their defense, and a place like Iowa can't. Those are the primary differences, and that's why you see so often in games like this where it's competitive in the first half, but the team that has depth and can rotate eventually takes over in the second half. It's why you see that play out in college football so much. Yep.
One thing we did not even talk about was JSN made his return in the Iowa game, but everybody saw it. It looked like he kind of limped off when trying to run deep for a pass, and it looked like he tweaked it again, is what it kind of looked like. But
Kyle, Ryan Day says he just reached his pitch count.
But rule number one, Jared.
We know what we saw, Ryan.
Yes,
Ryan, buddy. We know what we
all
saw.
Love you.
We love you. We appreciate you. We're big Ryan Day fans here. We know what we saw. Yep. We know what we saw. But once again, though, Kyle, what happened? What would happen to Iowa if they lost a guy? What would happen to Iowa if they had and then lost a guy like Jackson Smith and Jimba? That's it. That's the end of their offense. Ohio State literally just plugs in a different 5-star wide receiver. That's the difference between places like this. Anyway, Kyle, yeah, that's it. That's the end of the show. Make sure to check out our highlights. Our highlights can be found on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. We'll clip out like a minute from a show and post a highlight. So yeah, check out our TikTok page, our Instagram page, and our YouTube Shorts playlist. You can find that playlist at Shorts. You just search Sloopcast on YouTube. That no one goes to a URL for YouTube. You can just search Sloopcast on YouTube. It's fine. And we're at Sloopcast on Instagram and TikTok as well. That's all the plugs I feel like doing. Kyle, do you have anything in Kyle's corner?
No, not really. Not really. It's been I've been trying to look for some good things to talk about that maybe not Ohio State here, but yeah, I don't. Let's just go ahead and end today's episode.
All right. Tonight's ending music will be brought to you by a Columbus-based band called Room and Board. So with all of that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, this is Room and Board.